So, welcome to the Profit by Design podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Sabrina Starling, the business psychologist, the author of How to Hire the Best and the 4-week vacation series. Here on the Profit by Design podcast, we talk about designing sustainably profitable businesses that give you more time for what matters most and more money in your bank account than ever. And today's guest is joining us, Keich, and we're going to be talking about the more money in your bank account side of things today. Keich is a senior credit and collections executive with over a decade of experience and a proven track record working in the logistics and supply chain industry. Currently, she holds the role of Chief Operating Officer at Central Credit Audit and Statewide Tax Recovery, in addition to being the CEO of her own consulting company, Full Advantage LLC, which is where we're going to be focusing today. Full Advantage LLC is an outsourced solution for billing, credit, and collections. Full Advantage looks, sounds, and feels like an extension of your company without the hassle of hiring, training, etc. Previous to that, she held the role of Vice President of Commercial Services, building out a new division of commercial services, offering customized workshops, training, and consulting for Inside Arm and the IA Institute. Before that, and pay attention to this part, this is where she's really interesting and intriguing. Before that, she worked her way up from being an accounts receivable specialist to director of credit and collections as the organization grew from a franchise under $5 million in revenue to a global logistics organization with $1.5 billion in revenue. It was Katie's responsibility to establish a credit policy, build a collections department, and train sales and credit associates across the country. As the architect of her organization's credit and collection policy, Katie achieved credit losses at one point of 0.3% on revenues of $650 million. This is a record unheard of in the B2B space. She is a 5-time winner of her organization's special recognition for outstanding performance. And no surprise why, right? When Katie's not out educating companies like Profit by Design podcast listeners on how to reduce their credit losses without sacrificing sales and increased revenues, Katie spends her time writing, singing, and hanging out with her husband and daughter at home in Pennsylvania. So, Katie, huge welcome to the Profit by Design podcast. I'm so excited that you are here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah. So I want to just kind of dive in and talk about the impact on businesses, small businesses, and collections and credit, because if we don't manage this well, it really impacts us personally as the business owners, but it also impacts our ability to grow. It impacts our ability to hire team and expand. And it just keeps us on a treadmill. And in my experience, this is an area of a business that's often overlooked. Like nobody's really paying attention to the loss that's leaking out the back of the business. We're profit first professionals at Tap the Potential, and we focus extensively on helping our clients get their expenses under control and creating that profit. And anywhere that there's money leaking out can just undermine all of that. So I want you to tell me more about what your experience is in supporting small business owners around this.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that's so important that I think a lot of businesses overlook is starting with the end in mind. So when you do that relationship, you don't think to yourself, does my contract, does my invoicing cover me and the cost of what this could, do from a, cost of collections if I don't get payment? And so one of the big focuses needs to be really looking at who I extend those invoicing terms to, who I'm willing to give an invoice to versus who maybe I want prepayment from, depending on the services or goods I'm doing. And then how I do it and what is the strategic method in which we consider how much we're willing to extend. So it's really important to take a look at how are you finding your leads and then how are you extending that credit. And I really focus through Full Advantage on understanding the business and then looking to see, well, do we want to give terms? Don't we want to give terms? How many, what's our appetite for risk? How much are we willing to extend in credit terms before we would get paid? And then what's our process going to look like on the back end from a collections perspective?
So I love what you said about starting with the end in mind, because we really need to think through the cash flow. There's a cash flow implication when we extend credit, but there's also the cost to the business, and you said the risk. How much risk are we willing to tolerate if things go awry? And what really got my attention, though, is you go all the way back to the finding leads. Where are you finding your leads? Because that impacts the quality of the people that you're dealing with.
Absolutely does.
Can you say a little more about that?
Yeah. So one of the things is I tell people, and I tell my clients all the time, all business isn't good business. If you have that mentality, chances are you're going to have some credit losses. And when we were growing and scaling in my previous role, it was important for us to understand that all business wasn't good business. And therefore, we had kind of our level of negotiation of what we were going to accept as a customer, how we were going to onboard them, and what we were going to set those terms at. And if we couldn't come to a mutual understanding on the front end, the relationship wasn't going to last. And we wanted to have that revenue continue to compound and stay with us. So we cared about how we brought them on board, having that mutual agreement on payment terms so that we could work with them to go forward successfully, versus just saying, here, you want to do business with me? Great. Here's the invoice, and not worry about any of the back end things. And it's just so important.
Yeah. So I think there's a values component to this. And that's what really intrigues me, because at Tap the Potential, as we take our clients through designing a business that is sustainably profitable, and we go through the Tap the Potential solution, what's woven in there is knowing our own immutable laws, our core values that are non-negotiable standards, and using that to attract the right team members and attract the right clientele to the business so that there's a good match. And I firmly believe that when you are doing business with clients whose immutable laws are very similar to yours, it sets you up to have a better experience when it comes to negotiating and managing payment and anything that goes awry. And if the immutable law match is not there when payments go awry, I think that's where really the wheels fall off the bus, particularly if we're not doing what you're suggesting, and that is, going over payment terms at the beginning and having that conversation.
Absolutely. It's so important to have the conversation to understand your clients or your potential clients' way of doing business, so you can understand how you can mutually work together to have that successful relationship. Yeah. I talk to my clients all the time about, it's real easy for you to say, oh, I'm going to have every client be on due upon receipt or net 7, or, whether it be services or goods, again, that you're extending to them. It's not realistic. And if you really want to scale and grow, which I think we're all in the opportunist side of this, which is we want to scale and grow, we need to think outside the box, which is get creative. And that was really what made, a piece of what made, me so successful, that I was creative with understanding whether it was the Fortune 500 business that we were bringing on, or the Fortune 50 business, or the small to medium-sized business that was really struggling even to stay afloat out of the gates. So really understanding how they operate, and then what is it that you're looking to get from a payment terms, cash flow perspective, and what they're looking to be able to extend from an expense perspective.
So what are, just in negotiating that, what are some questions that we would want to be asking as we're negotiating that?
Yeah. So the first thing we want to we want to do a self, and I talk about this with my clients all the time. You want to do a self-evaluation to figure out what is going to be your non-negotiable. Like, what is your bottom? I'm only willing to go to this number. And for everybody, that's a different thing. And I have a whole methodology of how we get to what it is that you're comfortable extending. But let's just use the example. You're comfortable at net 30. That's the farthest you can go from a cash flow perspective. You want to then go and have the conversation and say, hey, can you walk me through your business? Like, what is it your organization does from an invoicing perspective? When do you get your cash, and what does that look like? And And then you're going to have, okay, so I'm hearing right now that you really invoice around net 15. So if you're paying me net 7, you're going to be essentially cash flowing that free of interest, probably that time frame. So you don't want to have that float in there for them. So you want to really come to a point where, okay, you're at net 15. Well, what I can do for you is we can look at like net 20 terms or net 25-day terms. That way you've got a little bit of extra float if the payment gets lost in the mail or somebody kind of forgets to pay you. But that's really where I could come. I can meet you at 25. So does that work for you? And so many businesses don't have this conversation today. They just have their net 30, everybody fits in, square peg, round hole. And they end up going off the rail very early out of the gates in the relationship because they didn't have the conversation, and they get the invoice and they don't get payment. And they're like, well, yeah, I have net 60 with all my vendors. Oh, you have net 60? My non-negotiable was net 30, remember? Well, how do you make that work, right? That's a non-adversary way of working it after they've done the relationship, after you sold them. So get in front of that. Have that conversation on the front end.
Yes. And the fact that it's a collaborative conversation creates buy-in for both parties. And when it's not a collaborative conversation, there's no buy-in from the other party. And that's where I think so many things can go awry. In your experience, Katie, what are the top 3 reasons businesses don't get paid on time?
That's such a great question. And I love when people ask me that. And I don't get asked that question often enough. So first one is they didn't get the invoice. They just did not get the invoice because you did not get the payment information. You did not get who does the invoice go to? How would they like to receive that on the front end? You didn't ask those questions. So therefore, you do all the work. You got the business. You did your side of it. And then the invoice just didn't get paid because they never got it. Number 2, you didn't get paid because they have a dispute. They didn't agree. There's something on that invoice that whether it's payment terms, well, I didn't pay you because those payment terms, we can't work within those. The date on it, the pricing on it. There's a number of things that all my different clients have different reasons, but there's some sort of dispute that causes them to not pay it, right? And then the third thing, and this is one that I always talk about when I think about starting with the end in mind. The third thing why they don't pay is because they can't actually afford to pay you. Why is that important? Well, because if you just did your goods or services for them and they can't actually afford to pay you, unfortunately, and I hate to be the bearer of bad news, that just shouldn't have been somebody you went forward with to start with. So if you want to scale and grow, going forward with people who aren't going to pay you or can't afford to pay you is a risk that you're taking. And that company isn't going to pay you. Now they go to a third-party collections. You don't have your buttoned up front end with your contracts and your invoicing. That's going to be an expense to you as a business owner. Cost of collections is not something, if you're not on top of that on the front end, now it's part of your margin that you're giving back if that agency can even collect the money for you, or that a collections attorney. And then most importantly, now your time and energy spent with somebody who isn't going to compound with you because they're not going to do business with you, or you're not going to want to do business with them again.
Yeah. Oh boy. I wish I had encountered you 15 years ago.
I get that a lot.
I have experienced every one of these pain points. And so I will start with my horror story on not knowing the right person to send the invoice to. So when I started out, I coached a lot of mid-sized businesses. And I also had some small, 5, 10 employee type businesses. Well, I treated the mid-sized businesses like I treated the 5, 10 employee businesses. Well, in a 5, 10 employee business, you send the invoice to the owner. In a mid-sized business, the owner is like, "What? You sent me what? Where?
Did you get my accounts payable person? Why did you get it?
Haven't seen it." And not only that, the accounts payable person is probably not in the loop on the terms that were negotiated. So they're sending, the invoice finally gets to them 2 months later. And then they're, "Oh, yeah, we'll pay it in a month." And it says net 30. Never mind that the date that this invoice was sent was 2 months ago. So as a startup coach, That was horrifying because it really impacted my, my household budget at that point when that was happening. So that was a school of hard knocks lesson for me. So I totally agree. Find out who is the best person to send the invoice to, and then negotiate the terms and make sure that the person who's receiving that invoice is aware of the terms that have been negotiated. Don't trust that the other business has all their systems in place where that's going to happen, because communication is the number one thing that breaks down no matter what size business we're dealing with. So the dispute, again, that I've experienced that where someone has signed up for coaching with us and a business partner was not on board. So they said, yes, we want to do coaching. But then the business partner who's looking at the bills is saying, you did what? You signed us up for what and why?
Yeah.
And so then that all breaks down, and that goes to quality of clients. And so one of the things we've done is we won't even have an initial consult unless both any interested party who's making a decision is there in the consultation. So everyone's on board and knows what's going on. And again, it's just about putting the information out there at the front end. And then can't make payment because they simply can't. This is where we need to really think about the quality of our clients. And, I'm such an advocate for knowing our sweet spot in our business. So that means who are our top clients, the ones who are responsible, the 20% who are responsible for 80% of the revenue. Those clients are not the ones who can't afford the service. And when we go outside that sweet spot and we dip down and we say, well, I think we can manage this. That will help them. And maybe even we give special payment terms. That's where down the road things might go off the rails. So I think we as business owners really have to have that gut check with us about the price point of our services, who we're offering it to, and are they in a position to afford it. One of the things that we've done at Tap the Potential is as people are coming in our program, we do a profit audit of their business. So we look at what is their actual profit potential, because we know what we're going to do for them and how that's going to impact their profitability as long as they implement. And so if we can see that they can make a minimum, and this is our standard, we don't take anybody unless we can see that they can make a minimum of a 3-to-1 return on their investment in their work with us. And we really go a lot higher than that in return on investment, but that's our minimum to get in. And we're looking at that, and we will tell people, we'll turn them away if we don't think it's a good fit, because it's not going to serve them. It feels awful to be a business owner and not be able to pay your bills. Like, we're not doing anybody a service if that's the position we're putting them in. And then it feels awful for us too, because we're like, hey, we're pulling out all the stops to help this person and they're not paying us. That doesn't feel great either. And I think it really reduces the quality of the service that the client's going to receive in the first place.
100%. There's a couple of things that I want to hit on that you talked about there. So the first one being, again, the person that's not able to pay you because they can't do business with you, there is a opportunity cost there that you lost that you don't even realize, because you put your time and energy into somebody who isn't going to reap you the rewards of the profit, right? So that there's that missed opportunity cost that I think a lot of business owners miss, candidly. And then two, the other side of this is you want to be able to build your company with a foundation, a solid foundation. If you do these steps that I work with my clients on, which is how to onboard, how to find the right customer, how to make sure you extend where it's smart and where your appetite for risk is comfortable, you'll have that customer for a long time. You'll have that reoccurring revenue. And so when you don't do that, in my opinion, you almost look like you're just looking for the revenue for revenue's sake. And you're going to run on that hamster wheel, that treadmill you talked about earlier, all day long. And you're going to get burned out. You're going to get tired because you're not going to see the compound effect of that revenue.
Yes, I cannot agree more. And Katie, I just want to point out, we have some viewers watching us right now. So I want to say to viewers, we're live, and this is a great opportunity. If you want to ask a question of Katie, I've got the comments open here. I'll monitor comments and questions, she's a great resource, and she's here with us. So bring those questions on, or if you're relating to anything that we're sharing here, definitely pop that in. That I want to circle back to that opportunity cost piece, because you mentioned the compounding of a client who becomes a client for life and their impact on the business. I cannot speak highly enough about the importance of that, because like in our business at Tap the Potential, we bring clients in. Oftentimes they're in a place of like, my business is taking over my life. It's overwhelming. And we're really helping them take their life back from their business. And by the way, any of you who are listening to this and you're ready to take your life back from your business, you want to strongly consider joining our Entrepreneurs Take Your Life Back Facebook community. The link is here. It's tapthepotential.com/group. And so we work with business owners to take their life back. And that means learning how to hire the best, getting team in place, scaling the business, getting that team trained up, and getting those leaders trained up and ready to lead the business without the business owner. So our program is designed for people to come in for a year, but they stay with us way past a year, because you get that foundation point where it's not as stressful and you're profitable and you're able to take some vacation, but then you want to go for the 4-week vacation. So that's a higher level. It's an ascension into the program. And so if we just say, okay, we're going to bring someone in and we know it's kind of iffy, and they come in and they have to leave after 3 months, we have poured, because we do so much on the front end with them, we onboard. So we've poured all this love and work on the front end, and then we lose all of that could happen because they send their team members into programs with us. And so there's several years worth, in my opinion, of revenue loss. And to me, it's not even just the revenue, it's the relationship, because now we have someone out there who's like, Tap the Potential isn't all they said they were going to be, because, I wasn't able to take full advantage of their service. So they didn't get to have the full experience of what we can offer. So this opportunity cost is very, very significant. When you're working with businesses and there are collections issues, so let's talk about the collection side of it. I'm very curious about how you help business owners navigate that.
So I have a couple of different opportunities. So one of them is that I come in as the consultant, right? We have this relationship. I look at the current processes, procedures, whether it be from the credit side of things and or both the collection side of things, how you do your sales as well as part of my conversations. And I really come in to revamp that whole step-by-step process. And I work with your team and we get their buy-in. It's got to start at the top. Listen, it starts at the top. If you don't have the buy-in as the business owner, the CEO, president of the company, nothing is going to happen. And I tell people, like, I don't waste your money, because I want to see it be successful. But if you're not in and you're not invested in this, you're not going to reap the rewards. But if you are, this can get very, very lucrative for you. So it starts with that opportunity where I come in and I create a custom process based on how they want to invoice, what their appetite for risk is, how they want to create the credit policy, the collections policy, all of that. That's one way. Second opportunity is through my company, I have employees that just take it from you. So you're really good at your craft, your goods, your services. We will do the credit. We will do the collections. We will help you to extend it. We'll take it all in-house. You don't need to hire. You don't need to fire. You don't need to train. It's just an out-of-the-box solution for businesses that are wanting to scale and grow. We will handle the invoicing, the billing, the payment processing, the whole nine. And we will help you to get to a point where you could make the decision to bring it in. But we're so good, what ends up happening is they decide, no, I don't even want the headache of adding those additional people to my team. You got it. You train them. They're doing well. And it looks and still sounds like an extension of your company. We're calling as, profit by design and saying, hey, you owe this invoice. Did you get the invoice? Was there an issue? And why haven't we received that payment? And so we've really come up with a step-by-step process that either you can implement yourself and we'll help you through that very custom opportunity, or we'll just handle it for you. And that's one of the options.
So those are great solutions because I know first off that the part that teams hate is any kind of collections and having to do that. And it's always like, who's going to do that and handle that situation? And the other side of it, though, is I would imagine that as you take this on for a business, the initial expense that they have in bringing your service in is easily recouped once that process is in place and they're getting payments on time. There's a lot fewer bills that are or invoices that are going unpaid, and accounts payable for days or accounts receivable for, weeks and months building up there. That all starts to go away.
That's right. That's exactly what happens. So we end up handling it for them. And if we can't get it handled, then we'll work with them and let them know that our recommendation is to send it to a third party. We are partnered with a third party company that does excellent work and has amazing technology. And it's all contingency based. So it doesn't cost them anything from that additional perspective. And we find that when we're handling the calls for our clients, we pride ourselves on customer first. We want that customer to have such a great experience with us because we're representing you. We're representing your business. So we want them to come and do business with you continually and have, you to hear, oh, Susie was such a great person for me to talk to. I enjoyed, I know I fell past due, but she was so easy to work with. We got it all resolved and we want to continue with you. We care about that customer experience and those customers and businesses going back and doing business with you in the future.
So that is huge. And that's huge because especially, I'm sure you've seen this with other businesses too, with COVID, we have clients who under normal circumstances, no big deal to pay their payment. But for whatever reason, due to COVID, things are different and it's more challenging. And so, we want to make sure that we have someone who's going to maintain the relationship with them because they were a great client prior to some unusual outside event coming in and impacting the business. So just the fact that your team really puts the attention around maintaining that relationship and making something that oftentimes doesn't feel like a great conversation to have, making it a pleasant experience. And what I heard from that too is that the other person who's receiving that collections call essentially comes away feeling empowered.
Absolutely.
Like a choice and they have a decision and a way through something that probably felt like, oh, this is really heavy and weighing on me.
The biggest thing that happens when businesses get into these situations, and I'm sure a lot of your listeners can relate to, is they go radio silent because they're embarrassed. They don't know how to get out of the hole. My team and the third-party agency that we're partnered with is equipped to relate to them and to say, listen, the best thing for you to do right now is to communicate with me. Then my team actually has a formula for what we would then refer back to our clients and say, hey, we have a mutual agreement. This is the amount we're going to get from them, plus this additional amount. We're going to work together. You can actually work with them now if you want, instead of waiting till the balance paying full. We're confident in this program. So we have that formula so that you're not losing that revenue while they're paying that. In addition to when times get tough, I see this with businesses often, they're afraid to turn off the faucet because they're like, oh no, they're going to turn it around. They're going to pay me. We don't need your help, blah, blah, blah. And they let these companies get to a place where they can't really rebound without you turning off the faucet. Now you actually have to turn off the business. So we get in front of that with our clients and we say to them, hey, let me help you to know when to hit a pause. It's not a turn off. It's a pause. Have a conversation, come up with resolution, go forward, versus now you get to a place where the number is so large that it's like they're just in quicksand. They're drowning. They need help. And you're going to have to lose that revenue in order for them to get out of that quicksand. And to your point, maybe your competitor comes in at that point, or maybe they're just like, it's such a big number. I gotta run. I gotta change my phone number. But we don't want that to happen. So we really work to say, we helped you before. We know this is an issue. And our partners, they go even a step further. Oftentimes the reason that they got to that place is because they're not actually getting paid. So they go and extend, hey, let us help you get your stuff collected. We'll get the money for you on the other end, and we'll make sure our client gets paid. So listen,
that's
brilliant. Front to back, I got it.
You go, Katie. That's a great business model. But No, absolutely, because that's the underlying reason in there why the initial owner or business isn't getting paid. It's because the client is having collections issues
Oftentimes, yes. Not the only, but oftentimes.
Oftentimes, yeah. And I want to also just underline what you said about the pause. The pause is a really important option to have in place. We've used that with a couple of folks during COVID. And what we liked about it is it didn't mean we had to stop being in the background supporting the client during the pause. We wanted to create a plan. Here's how you're going to navigate this. This is what you're going to work on during this pause. We're still here in the background. We want you to succeed. And then, we would resume as needed. And that, because life happens to people, right? We've had clients who have had, they've gotten COVID and had a long recovery. We've had clients who've had major life issues that just weren't expected when they started their year-long program with us. So we have to be able to flex and navigate that. And I believe, in my experience, it builds a client for life because they know we're invested in them.
I 100% agree. In fact, I witnessed that. I witnessed where we helped companies in tough times, especially in the recession in my prior life. And that was what we had these customers. They're still there. They're still customers today. And I'm still a huge champion of my previous employer. I prefer business as often as I can, because I believe in what they do over there and what I taught the team to do. So absolutely.
So if you had one starting tip for somebody who is hearing this and recognizing, oh yeah, I have payment and collections issue, I have money leaking out, and just kind of starting to get a handle on this, where's the place to start?
So the first place to start, actually, funny enough, kind of goes with my gift for your audience today, is to start with having a credit application. Now you will talk to me.
I would have never thought that.
Yes,
okay.
Absolutely. Having a credit application. Be prepared to have conversations or to find organizations like mine that can assess who you want to work with and be able to ensure you're putting your time and money into somebody who's going to be here 6 weeks or 6 months or 6 years from now. Not where you're going, I'm going to have this conversation and this business is already upside down. That's a business I should be working with because I need to help turn it around so they can come back and spend money with you, right? But to start, for somebody who's like, how do I start? That's actually how you start. It's a credit application. Start to consider who you do business with and who you invest and give that time and effort into.
That's brilliant. So that just changes everything, because then it's in information that we have as we go into the negotiations, and we can be on more solid ground.
Yes.
With what we're dealing with. So being informed. So you mentioned you have a special gift for our listeners that you want to share. So tell us about that.
So my team, we put our heads together because I wanted to come up with something that was just like really cool and really applicable, and I felt like everything worked out super well. We are going to give you a credit application template. So we are going to share in our link today. It is customizable. You are going to be able to brand it, so you can just drop your logo in, put it. We already put in some of that very templated information, and you can play with the colors, make it your own, but this is the template. It's easy to use, and it helps you to consider, what kind of weekly revenue, monthly, annually, what you're going to have, and, reach out to me, reach out to my team if we can, be of service. And we have a model to help businesses, kind of scale and grow. We have it where you can come on and I call it like the a la carte version, which is the slow to ramp. So if you're just like, hey, I'm not super big, but I want to be, and I want to have you handle it, we have a model for that where we can help you to be picky and choosy about who you do business with. So our credit analysts will evaluate your customers for you, use this credit application, send it over, and they'll be able to help you to scale and grow your business.
Yeah. So that was my next question. What do you do with this credit application? Where do you get it evaluated? So you guys handle all of that. So
we do.
That is incredibly generous. We will put the credit application link that Katie is sharing, the template, in our show notes for the podcast. So everybody will be able to get their hands on it. And Katie, where can people follow you if they want to just stay in touch and see what you're up to?
Yeah, so I know we're going to include the link to our LinkedIn page, which is one area for them to join our followers on, as well as our Facebook page. I know my team gave the link for full advantage as well on there. And then I do a ton of, just connect with me on LinkedIn. I love to have conversations.
Yeah, so Katie is very active on LinkedIn. She posts these great motivational quotes almost daily. And I'm like, oh, like I love these quotes that you post, Katie. So yeah, you're very active on LinkedIn. So that's a great place for people to connect with you. Thank you so much for being here with us and for sharing. And this is a topic we've never had on the Profit by Design podcast, but it's a very, very important topic for us to be paying attention to in our businesses.
Thank you so much for having me. And I hope to come back again one day soon.
Absolutely.